Yeah, g'day everyone and welcome back to the TryPod Live with Winnie and Clarkey. We are here for our round 27 NRL preview show. We'll break down every single game for you and give you our best bets for the round. Winnie, the season has flown by, mate. It's been another great season, but the best part is still yet to come with finals around the corner, mate. How's your week been?
Yeah, mate, I'm bloody excited about tonight. I mean, I'm still decompressing from round 26. That was wild. Not great for my best bets. I went only 2-2, copped a loss on a long odds mixed matchup. But let's just super fast recap round 26. Storm B team made a great game, but in Townsville, the Dogs had a 10-0 home streak snapped. The Dragons gave up 44 points in a must-win game, while they scored 40 themselves and 28 in the last 10 minutes. That result then made the beatdown in the Battle of Brisbane all the more consequential. We had New Zealand getting the crazy comeback to farewell 2024 and Shaun Johnson in the Shire. Bad result for the Sharks. The Knights ensured that the road to the finals goes through Newcastle. And then none of those games were actually the headline of the weekend, because then we got Raiders Roosters. And naturally, a lot of that aftermath will come up again tonight. But if you aren't a regular listener, I would implore you want more footy chat, go back to our recap. I think we did pretty well tackling a whole heap of the talking points out of just an unforgettable round 26. Now we turn our attention to the final regular season round. And what I'm most excited about, mate, is every single game is meaningful. There are only 2 games this weekend that can't influence a top 8 position. And one of them's the Spoon Bowl, which we're going to hype up to be one of the biggest, bottom 4 clashes of all time. So I've got some best bets. I've got so many notes to get through, and I can't wait to chop it up with you over the next hour.
100%, man. I think last round reminded us just how tough this sport can be to predict. As soon as you think you know the NRL and how it's going to happen, it just reminds you how unpredictable it can be, and that's why we all love it as fans, mate. But round 27 is here. You've got some best bets for us, mate, so let's draw back the curtain and reveal those. What are your best bets going to be for the final round of the regular season?
Yes, I do have best bets. You know what? A couple of them are a good price on Dabble, so I'll plug them in right now, and people can copy those if they find them there too. All right, my 4 best bets. I'm going to go the Roosters, the team that we've talked about all week, or it's only Tuesday, but the discussion around the clock is about the turmoil and the disastrous afternoon for the Roosters, but they've still named a pretty damn strong squad this week in their age-old rivalry against Souths. And I'm going to go first half, -5.5, $1.88 on Ladbrokes and Neds. It's still important for the Roosters to put it all together with the new combinations. You don't need to search much for motivation in this type of game. And the Roosters need to hit the ground running in order to put a team on the park next week to upset one of the big dogs, which is the Roosters' only hope of still having a successful season, I believe. I'm going to go back to the well with the Dragons. I'm going to play -2.5 at $1.95 on Toppy, same price. Dabble, because the game means equal amount for both the Dragons and the Raiders, which is probably not a lot, but you've got to still win it and put yourself in the 8 and see, if the footy gods are going to shine on you. The Dragons are the home team. The Dragons are the ones that are off back-to-back really disappointing displays. The Raiders are the ones that have just upset Penrith and the Roosters and poured it all out in doing so. I don't know how much more Canberra's got left to give. I'll take the Dragons in a classic bounce back spot. I'm going to go Cowboys +2.5, $1.87 on 365, where you'll actually win if it goes to extra time. Don't have to worry about an extra time try. And they've had some close games, the Cowboys and Dogs, in recent seasons, including the most recent encounter. It's a big game for both teams. The difference for me is just the spine. It's really tough for the Doggies without Matty Burton there, and with the playmakers the Cowboys have possessed. Could be give them the edge in a close game, although I don't need to win catching 2.5. But I do need to win with Manly on Sunday for my 4th and final best bet. I'm just going to go the $1.80 head-to-head on Sportsbet. And look, it's a pretty even matchup. I think I like the Sharks more than I like Manly, especially without Turbo. But Manly at home, and with clear motivation that a win ensures you're playing at 4 Pines week 1 of the finals, whereas for the Sharkies, they may not be playing for anything on Sunday. So therefore, that asymmetric risk with motivation, which is as important a factor as anything else in round 27, is enough for me to play a Manly side that if we forget about, or if we forgive a 16-point lead blown against West, which I know is asking a bit, but I'm kind of looking at the last 4 or 5 weeks for Manly as a side that is putting it together ahead of a finals assault, whereas the Sharkies are a little bit more searching for their best brand of footy.
Yeah, man, I'm super excited to go game by game with you. I'm pretty much seeing all of those on a similar page to you, so it's going to be fun to break it all down. But as always, before we get to our previews of each game, let us hear from the CEO of Top Sport, Mr. Tristan Merlehan, with some exclusive market insights.
G'day everyone, it's Tristan Merlehan here from Top Sport. We're into that time of the year where there's only 1 week until finals, where it's going to be a very exciting lead in, and obviously there's going to be some high quality footy. There's been a massive shift in the premiership market on the back of what happened on Sunday. We took a very sizable bet from one of our regulars on Penrith on Saturday morning at $3.60, and I was reasonably comfortable laying them at that point. It looked like they were going to finish third or fourth and have to navigate through an away final with Nathan Cleary coming back, but then all hell broke loose, as we know, with the Sharks losing and then the Roosters obviously having all that carnage on Sunday. So that shifted the market dramatically. We saw the Storm shorten up from $3.20 to $2.60, the Panthers from $3.60 to $3. The Roosters went from $3.60 out to $7. The Sharks, $12, drifted a bit too, and the Bulldogs, they've gone from $9 out to $13, obviously on the back of their disappointing effort against Manly, who are firmed in the 17. So certainly some big moves there in the marketplace. So I'd suggest the market, if the Roosters were at home against Penrith with Walker and those players all in, they're probably close to picking. Whereas now, if Penrith play them at Penrith Park, then you'd imagine they're going to be in that sort of $1.40, $1.50 range, I would suggest. So we'll see if that's the case, but certainly a big change in that, and obviously that first week is a crucial week to decide who goes through into week 3. So just having a look at the last round of fixtures, it's such a tricky weekend to price. The Storm are gone from 7.5 out to 15.5 on the back of them naming pretty much a full strength side, and the Broncos obviously not. We've got the Wooden Spoon Bowl, the Tigers v Parramatta, which hasn't moved, but that should be in a competitive outing. The Roosters gone from 8.5 out to 11.5 despite all the injuries. And then the other game that's shifted significantly is the Seagulls have been back from pick 'em into -1.5 as well. Then all eyes will be on the Knights against the Dolphins on the last game. The NRL is fortunate to have scheduled that. That'll be an absolute beauty. 2 teams that a lot of fans enjoy watching, battling it out to make that last top 8 spot. So good luck if you're having a bet over the weekend. Of course, gamble responsibly, and can't wait for the finals to kick off.
Boom. Thank you very much to Tristan for his clip there, as always. Let's chop it up, Winnie. Let's go game by game, mate. Break it all down. We kick it off with the first game. Friday, 7:50. Broncos host the Storm. We're at Suncorp Stadium. Thursday. What did I say? Did I say
Friday,
Sunday?
Mate.
Friday. Oh, okay.
Friday. It's coming even earlier.
Whoops. Thursday, 7:50. Sorry, everyone. We are at Suncorp Stadium. That line was set at -10.5 against Storm, but it has blown out to -15.5 now. That is because all their stars have been named to return, minus Ryan Pappenhausen. So Suafar Longo moves to fullback there. For the Broncos, they will be without Katoni Staggs. That moves Selwyn Cobbo into the centres. Corey Oates comes onto the wings for his final game as a Bronco, rather. Payne Haas is out, so Fletcher Baker moves to prop. Brendan Piakura and Xavier Willison are both out, so Jaden Hunt and Kobe Hetherington come in. All right, Winnie, we have 2 sides here that are realistically playing for nothing. Win doesn't change their fortunes in the slightest in terms of their season. But when you break it all down, how do you see this one playing out?
That's it. This is the one game that has no bearing on finals. Well, other than the Spoon Bowl, but that's got significant bearing on the ladder as well. Yet it is still important. We're going to tune in and we want to see how Brisbane respond after hitting basically rock bottom last week, bashed in the Battle of Brisbane, all the subsequent scrutiny out of the game. And you've got an opponent that is as ruthless as any and like a rested, caged animal, the Storm, that are ready to be unleashed on Suncorp and will be happy to repeat last week's medicine, those to the Broncos, if Brisbane's flat whatsoever, which there's a fair chance of occurring. I have to start with a bit of a tangent because I feel like I missed an opportunity again, and it's my fault. The line, as you said, was 7.5 yesterday. And maybe some people assumed, well, the Storm wrapped up the minor premiership in round 25. That gave them ultimate luxury to rest in round 26. So people might have felt, so the same logic applies in round 27, right? But I never thought the Storm was going to rest everybody 2 weeks in a row. So as soon as we knew for a fact everyone was resting in round 27, I've been saying the Storm will play full strength sorry, did I get that right? They rested everyone in round 26. So I've been saying they'll play full strength in round 27. Why? Because you don't want to get rusty ahead of the finals. It's a Thursday game, so you're guaranteed a good turnaround anyway ahead of that all-important finals game where you want to play your best. It's Brisbane in Brisbane, a game that Melbourne always gets up for. Love dominating this matchup. Last season was an exception, and remember, Brisbane smashed the Storm in week 1 of the finals. If anything, all the more reason to return the favour. So getting back to what I saw, this line opened up 7.5. I thought that's definitely light on. We know that Brisbane are reeling, and Storm will be full strength on Tuesday unless there's players carrying a niggle. So, I don't know. Should I have given that out on Sunday? Again, I'm limited because I try and make it simple to follow, and my best bets all year long have been on a Tuesday night. And last week I said the same. I regretted not playing Cows minus 9.5 against Storm, and a backdoor try actually saved that. So it doesn't always go your way, just getting a good line. In fact, who else remembers this corresponding fixture a year ago where I thought I was doing all the followers a solid? I said, get on that Brisbane minus 3.5. Remember, a year ago, Brisbane was top of the table. A win would get the minor prem. Melbourne were fourth, could not go up or down. So I said, get that minus 3.5. 24 hours later, Brisbane is a double-digit favour, and I'm feeling great about my early play. And then Brisbane rested everybody as well on the Tuesday and lost the game. So getting the best, the number is only part of it. It's still got to play out for you. But all that tangent aside to say, yeah, of course, I wish I had minus 7.5 in my pocket because it was there for the taking. And it's something that I promise everybody I will actually review in terms of that's an area of the pod I think I know I could improve to the benefit of people who follow. The good people who follow deserve the very best of the best bets. And we've got to open up more windows to be able to execute on those for sure. But as it stands tonight, looking at the game or ahead of Thursday, Brisbane comes in. They already got destroyed last week. Now no Stags, no Haas, no Willison. One positive being Walsh listed in the reserves. Is it worth playing him on Thursday? I'd say big picture, absolutely not. But Walsh is the type of player with that pride that will want to be there. The pressure on Kevy is palpable. And look, you just don't want to end the year on back-to-back home shellackings on top of what's already been a horrible year, especially for Brisbane at home. So I'm not going to be surprised if Wolf does play, because if he's close to able, then they really do need him. And I still don't think they have a chance with him out there, but it's at least going to give them a little bit more to offer, which could also limit the damage that Melbourne can inflict. I should say beware a club off their low point. We've seen several examples this year where a team's just been absolutely piled on in the media, been very much embarrassed, and then sometimes actually where they dig in and find their best performance. But on the other hand, we could probably put a fork in Brisbane. They're done, surely, aren't they? I know I'm not backing the Broncos, and it doesn't really matter how high that line gets. Therefore, it's just a question to me. Do I want to lay 14.5 today when it was 7.5 yesterday? It's become a very obvious and public side if you play the Storm, who are full strength other than Pappy. But as I've said multiple times this year, Farlongo's a freak and hardly a downgrade. So I'm going to predict that Melbourne definitely wins. They do it well. If you like Melbourne, you should have already played them yesterday, but you probably can still find value in some extreme iterations of the line, like taking 30 plus, 40 plus. I saw someone in the comments 50 plus, because if Bellyache wants a fully dialed in display ahead of the finals, no one's going to be surprised if we see the Storm smoke the home side, are we?
No, we're not. And I kind of see that as kind of a rehearsal run for the finals. I think he rested everyone the week before because he's aiming to win next round, week 1 of the finals, which I believe he thinks will be the Sharkies based on how the ladder looks to have fallen. And I think then he realizes we get another week off there. So we don't want to be having 3 weeks off for one game.
Absolutely. You back yourself to get a week off. So if you were to rest going in, it's like you're really going to rest round 27, round 26, week like that means you wouldn't have played 3 out of 4. But everybody's aiming to win. But I also think it's about peaking in week 1 of the finals. And maybe there's a belief that you're actually sharper if everybody has a crack, played the week before, but you still kind of benefit from the freshness of giving everyone that week off prior.
Well, I'm really excited to see this game because just like we saw Wayne Bennett pull a bit of a master coaching move last week with so many changes, typically we do see coaches just pull the trigger and rest all their players in the final round. This is really the first time I've seen a coach rest them the week before and then bring them all back. So I reckon Bellamy might have an ace up his sleeve here. You look at the history of these two teams. The Storm have historically always had it over the Broncos. That has gone throughout the different generations they've had at their club, if you will. Of the 56 times they've met, the Broncos have only managed to win on 14 occasions. I think that's why finals week 1 last year came as a shock to so many people. I think it was 26-0. It was truly an outlying result because the last time the Broncos defeated the Storm at Suncorp prior to that was actually 2009. So it was a long-standing record there. Broncos have lost 6 of their last 7 at home. Their only win at home in their last 7 came over the Eels, and I don't think it came in impressive fashion. And when you look at both sides, yes, they're both coming off losses, but very different fashions. So I do favor the Storm here. I think they'll be really impressive with their troops returning. Can't say the same for the Broncos. You look at where that line was originally placed. It was at 10.5. Well, the Storm averaged 5 more points per game this season, and the Broncos concede 5 more points per game. So it did look perfectly poised at that 10.5 mark. But I think people have just really realized here that the Storm is the only way you can play this game if you're breaking it down. And that's why we've seen that line really blow out. Ultimately, when I put that all together, Winnie, I look at the Storm side that turned up last round. They showed me they are determined to play out this regular season. They didn't turn up to Townsville saying, well, this game doesn't matter. They did care. For the Broncos, I actually can't predict that will happen. Of their last 5 games, I'd say the only one they fully turned up in was in Townsville against the Cowboys. Why did they turn up in that game? In my opinion, the Cowboys opened the door for them, and they allowed them back in there with missed tries, errors, and silly mistakes. I don't see the Storm doing that for the Broncos side, so therefore I don't see them getting into this contest. So I will tip Storm at the line. I'm really confident they get a win here. Double-digit win, absolutely in my mind. Can't see anything else but that happening.
Thanks, as always, for the comments coming in. Like, there's a comment there, can't remember who said it, but would Walsh playing or not playing? Xavier asks, does it affect his Australian chances possibly? Because there is what are they calling it? 4 nations? No.
Pacific Championships.
Pacific. So who is it? Is it Samoa, Tonga, New Zealand, and Australia?
No Samoa. They're in England, so it's just 3 nations, Tonga, Australia, and New Zealand.
Yeah. So they're pretty big games, but the short answer, Xavier, no, because I've heard like even Mitch Moses is not playing this weekend. Will get an opportunity. The likes of a Walsh, if he wants to play for Australia, he can definitely join the train-on squad. He'll probably get a match in the PM's 13 against PNG. There's going to be lots of options. Dylan Edwards is there. Teddy's the incumbent. In fact, I think he's the incumbent captain. Ponga. Right, but Walsh, no, this doesn't decide it. And Ryan is asking about what about Broncos' second half type thing, which I did want to mention. Some Storm stars could go on ice early. And again, like Pappenhausen bumps his knee last week. Oh, let's take him off. Let's be extra cautious. It can happen in this one too. And that is one of the reasons against laying the line. But there's not many reasons to talk you out of playing Melbourne, but one thing to be cautious of is kind of the final 20 minutes of this game.
And with respect to the Broncos, it is funny that the only reason we are anywhat cautious of playing the line is actually a Storm factor. It's got nothing to do with their opposition. So I just found that interesting, mate. Game 2, Friday, 6 p.m. The one you've all been waiting for. Tigers host the Eels at Campbelltown Sports Stadium. Line is set at -3.5 against the Eels. There's been no change in that since team list. They welcome back Kelma Tuolangi at back row. Jake Tungo is out. Sean Russell comes onto the wing. For the Tigers, one main change. Josh Felady comes into the centres, and Alamalo is out for this one. As I said, Winnie, it is the Spoon Bowl. Some punters are saying finals has come 1 week earlier. 2024 Spoon Bowl. First time, I think, in NRL history, mate. So instead of who wins the trophy, let me ask you, who avoids the trophy in this one and why?
It's not the first ever spoon bowl in NRL history, and you should know that. Let me get to that in a moment.
Okay.
I am still a bit rattled by how well Parramatta played last week with nothing on the line, just because I think they heard about my best bet. But then again, the absence of pressure can be a positive. However, if it's true that playing without pressure brings the best out of you, that won't be the case this week. The pressure is well and truly on. I was listening to a pod only today with Nathan Hindmarsh speaking about how he played in a spoon bowl in 2013. It was against your very own Titans. Maybe you blocked it out of your memory because you achieved the spoon on that day, Clarkey, and that was at the Gold Coast. And Hindy said it felt like a finals game. And I guarantee you the sold-out Campbelltown crowd is going to feel that. Everyone tuning in is going to be interested, and I'm sure the players will feel it too. You got Benji. This is his first year taking over as head coach. Taking over a club that's had back-to-back spoons, avoiding a third in a row is important. Baz doesn't want it on his resume. I mean, neither do any of the veteran players for Parramatta. I've got Tigers coming in off back-to-back wins and a bye. Getting that bye before the spoon bowl is pretty fortuitous. It's like a Super Bowl where teams in the NFL get the 2 weeks to prepare for their biggest game of the year. And that's what Wests have had. Though Parramatta got a decent lead in too because they put on a bit of a show and I would say got some confidence out of the putting a score on the Dragons, though there was a scare at the end. So look, both these sides are actually the two worst sides of 2024 come in off a win. But as I say, Tigers are searching for 3 wins in a row, if you can believe it. They're both named as strong a side as they could at this point in the year. Is it obviously a shame that Buller got that injury in the last month, but Mason has had a dig in his opportunities. I'm sorry to say, from a betting perspective, I didn't have a best bet on this game because the market was right about where I would place it. If I have to lean, if you really want something out of me, I'm going to lean West with the start because they are at home, they are refreshed. But I look at the teams, Parramatta is a lot more experienced, and also just in terms of combinations, there are a lot more players on Parra that have played a lot of games together. And, you know, you draw deep on those combinations in important games, and this is one. And there is an edge to the Eels' spine, and I would say just the finishers in the back line. So I think you have to favour Parramatta, and they are a small favourite in this game. But it's certainly anybody's game. And if West's to win, you know, they've got Appy. Galvin has finished the year strong. You've got 3 Fainu brothers that have had their moments, and both packs have got powerful runners. And if you're wondering who wants this game more, you probably have to lean to the home side and to West Tigers. So there's definitely a way for West to win this, but I will tip Para avoids the spoon and gets a win maybe by 2 points. I just saw enough out of Dylan Brown last week to convince me he can be the best player on the park on Friday night.
I think as well, the funny thing about this game is, Winnie, I think if you asked any footy fan what's the worst time slot, they'd probably say the Friday 6 p.m. game, and that's the game. That's the time slot that it ended up falling in. Now, these sides have met this year. It was way back in round 4. The Tigers walked away 1-point winners there, but I think, like, respectfully to both teams, they were bad then, and it's probably fair to say they're still bad now, hence why they're playing off for the spoon, I suppose. I will say for the Tigers, though, they have looked really rejuvenated in their last 2 games. And as you said, a win would make it 3 in a row here, which is something they haven't done since 2018. Then they get some big names arriving next year, and maybe it's a chance to turn a corner here for the Tigers. Meanwhile, the Eels, I think they've shown something in their last 2 games, but I wouldn't say neither were necessarily impressive. I mean, scoring 44 points is impressive, but then allowing your opponent to score 40 and almost come back is you know, probably the exact opposite. It's really unimpressive. When you go to the season averages, both sides are conceding an average 30 points per game this year. That's insane. And I'm not sure how this occasion plays into this stat. Do we get a big shift on defense from both sides? Or do we get like an under-20s type match where it's just attack with attack, and whoever has the best attack wins, defense out the window? If anyone feels like they have a good read there, then an overs-unders play could be a great bet, but I just can't find that read. I think the Tigers here are the strongest second-half team. I make that assessment based on not only their own performances, but also how badly the Eels have faded in the last 2 weeks. So my prediction for this game winning would actually be Tigers at the line if I could find a 4.5 out there somewhere. But I'll also have a smaller amount on Eels halftime, Tigers full time, And I did see, I think it was Colt on YouTube, put that in the chat at some stage as well. So Colt, I love where your mind's at, mate. I'm definitely going to have a little bit on that as well, just based on, what we've seen. Some power in the first half. They were good in the first half, even against the Broncos, and horrible in the second half in their last 2 weeks. Alrighty, mate, let's jump across to Game 3, Friday, 8 p.m. Rabbitohs host the Roosters at Accor Stadium. The line was minus 10.5. It's moved ever so slightly to minus 11.5. The Rabbitohs, they're without Jack Whiten, so Dean Hawkins comes into the halves. Richie Kenner also comes in. Fletcher Myers is out. For the Roosters, no Sam Walker, no Brandon Smith. Sandon Smith and Connor Watson are their respective replacements. Nat Butcher is out, so Nahafua White moves to lock. Swea Wong joins the bench. Daniel Tupou is rested, so Junior Ponga comes onto that wing, and Joseph Suali'i is back with Michael Jennings making way. All right, Winnie, well, if I asked you to predict this one last week, I suspect you would have said Roosters by a significant margin. There wouldn't have been a second doubt. But now, a few injuries later, it is brought to a smaller double-digit line. They are drawn ever so slightly back to South's level, but you still believe they'll have more than enough, particularly in that first half.
Yeah, the injuries clearly have caused a market shift, and there's a bit of negative sentiment around the Chooks this week. Now is actually the time where I'll jump on the Roosters. So my best bet is minus 5.5 first half. What's at stake other than being the oldest rivalry in the game? Let's just make it clear. In every game, what's at stake? The Roosters would want to win to avoid slipping to fourth. That's if the Tricolours rate their chances higher against a Penrith in Sydney as opposed to travelling to Melbourne. And I acknowledge that that's a bit like, what do you want to choose, the frying pan or the fire? And Tristan basically echoed what I prognosticated on Sunday night, which is we've gone from the Roosters being on the level of a Penrith and a Storm, and in any given finals game, that being basically a toss of the coin proposition, to Tristan said, now you'd have Penrith, for example, $1.40 or $1.50 against the Roosters in a finals match. And that is, I said you have to downgrade the Roosters by a try. So $1.40 or $1.50 favourite correlates to a 5 or a 6 or even 6.5 point favourite. So it's a massive shift. Does that mean that the Roosters can't win the comp? No, I've heard people write them off. I get it. And I know that Walker was having such a great year and that the ceiling has diminished. But, okay, so the Roosters will be $3 underdogs in a couple of big games in the finals. So can a $3 underdog not win? It's still possible. It's just that much tougher. If I'm Trent Robinson, now I'm basically going, look, we're top 4. We've worked hard to get there. And top 4 gives you a double chance. But we have basically no chance, we being the Roosters, if we lose in week 1 of the finals. The Roosters absolutely need that week 2 off more than any team, right, with the current, after the carnage of Sunday. So you have to put your team in a position a bit like Melbourne to be as sharp as possible to just throw the absolute kitchen sink at most likely a Penrith side who still don't have Nathan Cleary back this week. So is he playing? We're not certain. Are they beatable? It's possible. So I think the Roosters understand this is a big game. You've got to bounce back from a disappointing loss. You've got to put your best foot forward. You get Swali back. Watson's still a good option at 9. The Roosters have resisted the urge. I would have liked from an entertainment standpoint, I would have loved Manu in at 6. I'll have a go at it. Nwonga Nituaze is in the reserves. Bring him into the centres. And then, Sandon Smith could be like your utility on the bench, but Sandon Smith has been slotted into the halves. But I do believe that's a choice by Robbo that gives them the best ability for success, in the short term, because it's not as radical of a change. And then on top of all this, I'm playing against Souths. I know that Souths will get up for it because it's a big rivalry game, but it's a lost season. You've just lost Whiten on top of a punishing defeat at the foot of the mountains a week ago, and where we actually, fortunately, we had a winning best bet. I know that Souths are at home in front of members. You're going to give your best against the Chooks, but Cam Murray's still suspended. I'm going to take the far superior side that I still think has belief and will want to show what they're capable of.
I think most people, when I break this down, probably think I sound like a broken record, but Souths have looked cooked for a long time. I continue to say it. And I just think the season cannot end quick enough for this side. But the question is, can they just get up for one more game? Can they get up just one time at home against their arch rivals? And my answer is no. And I'll tell you how I arrive with that. When you look at their season past round 10, they have wins over the Eels, Tigers, Titans, Broncos, and Manly. Now, the first four I mentioned there, we know the struggles they've had this season. The only team that appears to be impressive in that bunch is Manly, where they won 14-0 in round 16. Don't forget, though, Manly were missing Turbo, DCE, Garrick, Croker, Gerbo, Paseka, and Aloye. So they were weakened all across the park. You take that out, and the Rabbitohs this season have simply not turned up against a side the caliber of the Roosters or a side anywhere near their level, even with these injuries. So we'll go across the fence to the Roosters. I feel like the injured player theory will apply here, with plenty made in the media that their season is now over. And for all the injuries they sustained, like, can we be fair here? They brought in Swea Wong, one of the most impressive youngsters. Nafua White, a New Zealand international, replaces Butcher. Their half next year, Sandon Smith, comes in, and a New South Wales Blues utility, Connor Watson, moves to hooker. So I really don't like, they are huge injuries, but I also don't want to underplay it, but don't want to overplay it either. Don't forget for the Bunnies, they still average. Don't forget for the Roosters, they still average 30 points per game this season. And that's despite them struggling to score last round. And the Bunnies do concede an average of 28. So I actually predict points will still come easily enough here for the Roosters. I think the difference will be now they've had a week to prepare with this lineup, and more particularly with this spine. Whereas last week it was kind of, oh my God, this Raiders side has really turned up, and we've got some key injuries, and they got a little bit lost. They have won 4 of their last 5 over the Bunnies, and the Bunnies this year have 2 wins out of 12 attempts on current top 8 sides, that being the Manly game I've already discussed and the Bulldogs all the way back in round 4. So my prediction here, and I'm really confident on this one, Roosters by a double-digit margin. I believe they will win this one and win big. And Dominic Young. I went back and had a look. The Rabbitohs have conceded a try to the right winger in their past 7 consecutive games. So certainly a try scorer like Dominic Young would be a great shout, particularly when you consider Joseph Manu will likely not be shifted from inside him this week. So Roosters by a double-digit line there, Winnie, and Dom Young to crash over. Alrighty, game 4 is at Saturday, 3 p.m. Dragons host the Raiders at Nostrada Jubilee in Cogra. Line was set. Have I missed a game here? Or have you got the wrong thumbnail?
No, I think I jumped the gun.
My bad, sorry. Minus 3.5 against the Dragons, guys, and there have been no changes to that line. Jack Bird moves back to the centres, so Lycan King Tongia remains in the halves. Ravalawa is out. Jacob Liddell returns. For the Raiders, Kyo Weeks shifts to fullback. Fogarty and Strange are their new halves pairing. All right, Winnie, this is a huge game. We have 2 sides that are playing for 8th spot, only to be knocked out a few days later, however. Now, the Raiders couldn't have done more in their past 2, and the Dragons couldn't have done less. They meet here. You're going to tip the Dragons to turn their fortunes around.
Yes, 25 hours after this game ends, the winner will be knocked off their perch unless that game 24 hours later hasn't ended and it's in extra time, and then the winner of Dragons Raiders will actually start to believe. And the crazy thing is that as unlikely as a draw occurring is, like Dolphins Knights, which we'll get to, it's going to be a close game. It's not impossible. You want to win and give yourself that chance, because imagine if it actually was a draw and then you didn't play your best footy on Saturday the day before. So granted, that doesn't really help you with the handicap here because that applies to both of these sides. But to me, the Raiders have played 2 straight grand finals. The Raiders knew they weren't going to make the 8, and they've had back-to-back massive upset wins over the Roosters, and the prior week was to Penrith. Now, the Dragons probably aren't a good team. That was the question. A few weeks ago, you would have said the Dragons deserve to be called a good team. The Dragons deserve to make the finals. Remember, they went down to Melbourne and won. But in the last couple of weeks, the Dragons, inconsistency is one thing, but to no-show when your season's on the line is bitterly disappointing. But let's still call the Dragons an average team, because they're going to be sitting somewhere from, 8th to 10th in a 17-team competition. An average team off a terrible loss coming back home still isn't a bad play to me. And I know that on recent form, if you've watched the footy and if you've watched every minute of every game like we do, you'll say that the Raiders should beat St. George Illawarra by plenty, but that's just not how this works. The Dragons are capable of a lot more. They're going to be hurting. I can definitely see the Dragons taking it out on Canberra, who have, I'm telling you, have poured a month's worth of defensive effort into the last 2 games alone. So as Senor Win always said, you look for your money where you lost it, which we did on the Dragons, and I'm going to ride them for redemption this week.
I am going to ride the Dragons with you, mate. But look, they burnt me last week, no pun intended. But look, I'll tell you why I like them here, and it's basically the same reason as what you said. The Raiders physically cannot improve on what they've shown in the last 2 weeks. I know they get their halves pairing back. I don't care. They just beat back-to-back top 4 sides. They can't improve on that. That is like that's their limit, right? Whereas the Dragons, they have miles of room to improve because they have shown us more at stages this year. And I think if you are to kind of critique the Dragons on their last 2 games, then for me, I say they struggled with the weight of pressure and expectation to perform. That's removed here. Win or lose, realistically, unless of a 1 in 600 chance that the final game is a draw, there is no pressure here to perform for the Dragons. This is also the first time they have met this year, so there's no prior meeting to reflect on. When I first looked at this, I thought, well, I consider the Raiders to be the stronger defensive side. But across the season, they actually have a lower tackle efficiency rating than the Dragons, and the Dragons are only conceding 1 more point per game. So near enough identical there as far as defense is concerned. Then I went to the home ground. Raiders are 5 from 7 over the Dragons at Cogra, but they haven't played here since 2004. So we can't really take too much from that as well. So here's what I see happening, and this is my opinion. I see Shane Flanagan really looking at his players and challenging them. And he says, look, we missed the 8, but let's finish our season on a positive. We have made huge improvements last year. Everyone said we're going to get the spoon. Look at how much we've improved as a group. Let's go out there and finish this season on a high note. And I think that they can get that message and respond against a Raiders side who realistically has given a hell of a lot in these past fortnight. They would be sore. And although last round wasn't a golden point game, where typically we might look to the side to be tied the next week, the reality is they defended their try line for long periods of time with 12 men. So my prediction for this one, Winnie, is Dragons at the line and Zach Lomax for a try in his final game in a Dragons jersey. He has scored 4 from 4 this year at this ground, and Xavier Savage has conceded 6 tries in his last 7 games to the opposition winger. So I think those are some good stats in Zach's favor there. Dragons at the line, Lomax to score.
I'm glad you agree, mate. And the point about Flano is big too, because Flano was irate after last week. And you got to cast your mind back about 3 weeks ago. That was Ricky after the Raiders were blown away by the Cowboys. And didn't Ricky rile him up after that? And that's kind of what we both expect out of the Dragons. Yeah, they missed the 8. It'll be disappointing, but they're currently 11 wins, 12 losses. There's something to be said for a season where no one gives you a chance, finishing 12-12, as opposed to 11-13. You know, to win half your games is something. And on ability as well, I think I give the edge to St. George. Not recent form, but as we've both explained, this is that final opportunity to turn things around and end the season on somewhat of a positive note.
Exactly, and a win here is certainly more of a positive note than 3 consecutive losses to close the season. They'll want to avoid that at all costs. Game 5, Saturday, 5:30 p.m. Bulldogs host the Cowboys at Accor Stadium. Line was set at -2.5 against the Doggies. They are without Matt Burton, so Drew Hutchinson comes into their halves, and Bronson Xerri is back. Of course, Stephen Crichton returns, but they then lose Bronson Xerri. For the Cowboys, just the one change, that is Thomas McKaylee. As a little bit of a side note here, Winnie, I wonder how this field will be, because it would have been used only the day before at 8 p.m. for the Rabbitohs and Roosters game. So is there a chance the field will be a little bit more chopped up, and who does that favour? But it is a really important game. The winner locks in a home final, which we know is so crucial to both of these sides. The Doggies, they've only lost 1 game at home this year, and we know the Cowboys play much better in Townsville than they do Sydney. With that in mind, Winnie, who do you have in this game, and why is it the Cowboys?
Yeah, I feel like we've agreed almost too much, even though you've done really well with Clarkey's Collect, so I should take extra confidence. But there's got to be one or two games we see it differently. I wonder if it'll be this one, because I am taking the underdog, and my best bet is plus 2.5. And just to repeat the previous, if it wasn't obvious, I'm playing the minus 2.5 with the Dragons, $1.95. But in this one, I'm taking North Queensland. You said it there, at stake, a home final. It was a close game between these two last time, with the home side getting the edge. I feel like North Queensland pinched it on that occasion. It was a moment from Dearden after the Dogs really had a handle of that game. But as you say, the Dogs are so good at home, and these are bottom half of the top 8 teams. They only get one home game. And the Doggies would absolutely pack it out if they get to play at home, and it could be really used as a massive home advantage. And as for North Queensland, as disappointing as they've been on a few occasions at home, of course, they'd much rather make the opponent travel to Townsville than them being the ones travelling south. We've got Critter back, which isn't great for me, but Cherry and Burton being out, of course, and Hutchison going into the halves for the Doggies, while the Cowboys are fortunate enough to have minimal changes. It is such an intriguing game because they want that home eliminator. I suppose I should just mention the loser of this game can still host a final, but they would be needing Manly to slip up the following day, and Manly are a slight favourite. The Dogs have had a far better season, which is why I think more people will be on Canterbury in this one. Are the Dogs the better team? I mean, this week, I don't know. With no Burton, I think it's very close on ability. In fact, I would argue that the Cowboys are the slightly better team. And you talked about how we've seen the Raiders on full tilt, max effort. We've seen everything they're capable of, as opposed to the Dragons have got more to give. We know that. That's a little bit how I feel about North Queensland. There's upside there because of how many disappointing defensive displays they've showed us. It's been so hit and miss for the Cowboys. Surely an important game like this, the defense should be there, as opposed to giving up 30 last week to Melbourne, where it's hard to completely dial in when you are playing, a second string side. So going back to why I'm taking the Cowboys with the start, it's the spine being the difference to me. I'm going to call 3 of the 4 spine members for the Cowboys are Origin caliber, which means I'm cheating because Drinkwater's never played Origin. But I'll be fair to the Dogs, and I'll call Marnie an Origin caliber player because he's had a career year and he isn't that far off. It's still kind of 1 versus 3 in your difference-making positions. In what I anticipate is a tight game, those positions are often decisive. Of course, the Dogs' defense is top tier, and if they defend at their standard this season and the Cowboys regress to what they've dished up most of the year this year, then the Dogs will win. But I just think that the Cowboys can get up for the occasion, and therefore both sides should defend at a high level because it'll be similar to a finals intensity. I think it's pretty even, though. In fairness, I would say the Dogs have a few forwards going a little bit better than the Cows. And outside backs, when you've got that all-world talent of Crichton and, what Kiraz has done this year, Tracy's had a great season, you could even give the edge to the Dogs in the outside backs. But then I think I've got to mention goal kicking with Val, the way he's knocking them over, versus who will it be? The Sex Machine, right? Yep. It's going to be your second choice kicker. When you're catching points there, I feel like one conversion could go our way. Now that I've said that, Val will probably have an off night because I don't remember many best bets this year. We've won thanks to goal kicking, but I certainly can remember some we lost. So all in all, I think North Queensland can surprise the Dogs. I know people will look for a bounce back after the home bubble was burst, but it's not that simple. North Queensland have the type of players that can break through this elite Dogs defense.
And I'll be honest, man, I actually really struggled to break this one down. So my first thoughts were we have a side that is more flashy and they can break you down with points. Of course, I'm referencing the Cowboys there, versus a tough, gritty side in the Bulldogs that will go the full 80 minutes most of the time. So how do we get a read on their game plans to determine who's going to be able to kind of, implement their game plan? Now, the Bulldogs have won 7 of their last 8 at this ground, but the Cowboys have won their last 6 games over the Bulldogs. 6 of the last 7 over the Bulldogs. So no read there. The Cowboys won earlier this year by 2 points, but in the game previous to that in 2023, the Bulldogs won by 1 point. Both super tight margins. Again, no read there. Both sides have won 4 of their last 5. No read again. Both sides have exactly 14 wins this year. Completion rates and tackle efficiency are only 1% apart. So, I mean, it really is tough to get a read on this, Winnie. The Cowboys score more, the Bulldogs concede less, as you would expect. It's that much is pretty obvious here. But because I can't find a way to split these sides, I think if I had to play this, I would go either side 1-12. I just think it's an important game for both sides, which should it reduce the potential of a no-show occurring. I think we will see both sides really competing, but I will acknowledge, in line with your tip, if I had to go away from that 1-12 tip and give a winner, I would actually prefer the Cowboys because, as you said, I think they have a bit more upside than the Doggies do at the moment. So that's where my mind's at for that game.
So we still don't even disagree on a side. Now, let's deep dive a little bit further into the ladder because a few good questions. So Xavier asked, will these two teams play next week either way? They're currently 5th and 6th, and what I can tell you, Xavier, they definitely won't play next week. That can't occur, which I like. I actually don't usually like when you get two teams playing each other. They don't want to show their hand because they may meet next week. So basically what's going to happen, the winner of this game will finish 5th, which not only gives you that home final, but it means you're going to play 8th in the first week of the finals. We know that's Finns or Knights, and it's probably fair to say you'd rather play the Dolphins or Knights as opposed to Manly, who will get back turbo. And Manly, of course, have beaten Canterbury and North Queensland relatively recently. So it's not just home advantage, it's the opponent as well. So the winner of this will go to 5th. The loser will be in 7th. So they won't play each other, but there's plenty to play for this week. The other question Ryan had, could the winner of this game get to 4th? As I said, it's 5th versus 6th. And I'm going to answer that by saying no, because the winner would get level points with Cronulla. Cronulla could lose, but there's about 66 of points differential between these sides. So we'd be talking about who's even more realistic here. We've got North Queensland. Yeah, North Queensland, no chance because they're 150. As for the Dogs, if the Dogs won this game by 30, they'd still need Cronulla to lose by 36. And you got to think, like, even if Cronulla rested players, whatever the case may be, Cronulla will also know how many points they need to avoid losing by. So even if Cronulla was losing, it's basically not going to happen. So not going to be top 4. Had the Dogs won last week, different story. But 5th and playing the 8th best team in the comp and a team that no one's going to pick to win, as opposed to, say, Manly that have been noted as a dark horse. Plenty at stake.
Yeah, I agree. Like whether the Dolphins or Knights win on Sunday is kind of whether they're playing at a core against the Doggies or at Townsville against the Cowboys. I expect either of those to be favourites in week 1 of the finals. So it's a great point there. We've got 3 more games, mate. Game 6 is at Saturday, 7:35 p.m. Panthers host the Titans at Penrith Park, it's called now. I assume that's due to the merger of Blue Bet and Better. So the line was -16.5 against Penrith. It's now moved to -18.5. Panthers do welcome back Scotty Sorensen. For the Titans, Keanu Kinney is back. Dave Fafita and Philip Sami are out. So here we have one of the 3-time premiers meeting the 3-time bottom 4 finishing Titans, unfortunately, in a game where, look, I'll be fair, I criticised, I think it was the Rabbitohs and Tigers game earlier this year and said I can't see any fans being interested in this game. The same probably applies here, mate. I believe the Penrith will win pretty easily here, mate. Do you see it in similar fashion?
It is tough, isn't it? Like, you're a Titans fan, and it's like, if I was to tell you you're going to win 3 games in a row, you'd be so happy. Like, there's clubs out there that would be stoked to win 3 weeks in a row. And this Penrith team has won 3 comps in a row, 3 years in a row. So kind of light years apart. It's the highest line of the round, but understandably so. I will just say, we've seen plenty of surprises. So I don't need to tell you that every logical outcome doesn't always pan out that way this time of year. I have this feeling that, especially after I backed Titans last week, but I'm not brave enough to do so this time around, that the Titans need to show something heading into the off-season. Of course, your team is coming in off 3 straight stompings. And you come in, and it is kind of a sweet spot that you're playing an opponent that is going to demand your absolute full respect and attention. So you're not going to take the game lightly, and you're going to know that if you're off your game at all, you will get hammered. But there's also no pressure because nobody out there, nobody in the world is going to suggest that the Titans have any chance. And sometimes those are the games where a team can play with freedom and cause a big surprise. I'm just cautioning that, I suppose, and that's one of the reasons why I'm not going to lay the points with Penrith. That is probably too simple, and it's another very obvious public side, Penrith Saturday night, and I'm happy to kind of leave that alone. If I want to take a really obvious public side, I want to be on that as early as possible before the line moves, and now it's out that Fafita's not playing as well, so the line goes even further. And again, I go back to the fact that Penrith's just got so many bigger fish to fry, a little bit like we can say Melbourne on Thursday night. We can maybe say Roosters on Friday night. These teams that can just say, let's take Dylan Edwards off with 20 to go. Let's take some of our start, put them on ice early, which is another reason why that you're not necessarily going to get the complete foot on the throat, late in games, which sometimes is what you need when you're trying to cover a mega line. So there's enough for me to stay out of it. It's not really a game I'm looking forward to that much this weekend because I don't think I'm going to learn a great deal.
So the sides you all referenced there do play a part in Clarkey's collect this week, but not at the full line, to give a little preview of that which is still to come. My initial thoughts on this game is as simple as the Titans have clocked off. Now, when we previewed round 23, Winnie, and they were favourites against the Sharks, I said my only concern here is their grand final was beating the Broncos in round 22. They then went on to lose that game 44-0. Since that point, they have lost every single week for the past month at an average margin of 27 points. Now, that includes the Sharks, Dragons, Roosters, and Knights. 2 of those sides have scored more than Penrith this year, 2 haven't. So when you look at that line, and I think it's at minus 18.5 roughly now, it does look large at a first glance, but you're still getting almost 10 less rather than what the Titans are averaging in a losing margin over this past month. I just can't see how the Titans turn up here. Since 2013, we have only beaten the Panthers 3 out of a possible 17 times. Only one of those wins came at Penrith Park, which is what I really want to focus on for our next point here. This is the final regular season game at Panthers Park, formerly Bluebet Stadium, until it's demolished and replaced with a new stadium. Now, they are a good chance to play there in finals week 1, but it's not guaranteed. So this will be a sold-out atmosphere. I expect the Panthers to send this stadium off in the regular season with a huge bang. Therefore, give me Panthers at a double-digit line. And I can reveal Clarkey's collect now if you like, Winnie, because I have previewed all 3 of those games. It is as simple.
Yeah. I'll get you to share that. Sorry, I was just going to add to your point there of what's at stake because I should have set the table better. So Penrith are second going into the weekend. The Roosters will have played before, so the Roosters may actually be in second when this game takes place. But regardless, Penrith knows a win secures second. And even if the Roosters had lost, Penrith still wants to play to not allow Cronulla to overtake them. So there is clear motivation for Penrith, along with the sending off this stadium and just in general wanting to win at home.
Absolutely, mate. And so Clarkey's collect this week. It is the Panthers, Storm, and Roosters minus 9.5. That multi pays $3.31 on TopSport. I've previewed all the games for you guys. I've broken down why I see those 3 teams as double-digit winners. Now, I did try to go a little bit to get some larger odds at first, but then as you said, Winnie, these are all sides that realistically could rest players in the final 20 minutes or so. I still view them as good enough to be winning by 10. And to be honest, if they're not winning by 10 at that point, maybe they won't rest the players, or they probably haven't earned the right, so the bet's not looking good anyway. So I'm going to keep it nice and simple this week, mate. 3 heavy favourites, all to win by double digits, $3.31 on Toppy.
Yeah, that's exactly right. These are all, big double-digit lines, and that's why I am cautioning about a player, precautionary or planned rest. Sometimes you need that late try, but the lower you bring that line in, the less that comes into play. There's a couple of comments about Khan Pereira. He's 4 tries ahead of Dom Young, and neither of them scored last weekend, where, again, the Roosters were a 15-point favourite or a 20-point favourite by the time the game kicked off. So if you had any hope with Young, you really needed him to be scoring there. In fact, it was the other winger got a double in a very low-scoring game. So, I don't want to jinx AKP, but surely he's all but secured top try scorer for anyone who did jump on that one.
Well, the Rabbitohs have conceded at least 1 try in their last 7 games to the right winger. So I expect Dom Young will get 1, but yeah, you'd be unlucky.
Well, you know what I was thinking? It wouldn't be the first time that the top try scorer was decided in a Rabbitohs-Roosters game. Remember the year where the Rabbitohs put about 60 on the Roosters, and we had Corey Allen breaking the line, running into the in goal, and then passing it to Johnston to get him 4 or 5 on the night to overtake Kyle Felt, which was kind of cruel, by 1 try that weekend. That's what it would take for Young. The Roosters have got more important things to worry about, but he would need 4 or 5 to go outright. And boy, if you had AKP, if you had money on AKP, you'd be nervous if Dom Young's got 4 or 5 on Friday night.
Yeah, unlikely, but man, that Rabbitohs game, they were taking the Mickey. I remember that try too for Alex Johnson, which brought up his 30th for the year, which is obviously incredible. Let's move on to the Sunday games, mate. Game 7 is at Sunday, 2 p.m. The Sea Eagles host the Sharks at 4 Pines Park. The line actually was a pick-em at first. Then it moved slightly to -1.5 Manly, and it's remained there. For the Sea Eagles, Tolu Kola is going to be their fullback, which means Lehigh Hopewadi remains on the wing. Ben Travojevic is in for them as well. For the Sharkies, they welcome back Jesse Ramian and Ronaldo Mulatalo. Daniel Atkinson is on the bench, and that's because Hines and Trindle are the preferred halves there. All right, Winnie, we have a side here where if Manly win this, it takes them to 35 competition points. So they secure a home final no matter what. The Sharks, they could go as high as second and get a home final, but they need a bunch of results to go their way as well. So it's an important matchup regardless of both sides. Who do you see winning this one and why?
Yeah, I can only play Manly because I know it's essentially a must-win for the Sea Eagles to host that eliminator game in week 1, whereas the Sharkies will be most likely resigned to 4th. Understand there's no Turbo, there's no Saab, while the Sharks have named an even stronger team this week. And of course, Cronulla doesn't want to go into the finals on back-to-back losses. I'm very wary of Cronulla in this game, but I can't help but feel on a Sunday, it's a disadvantage to play Sunday in round 27 ahead of the finals as well. Cronulla can only, it's only human to have an eye ahead and be pragmatic. And we talked about resting players early once again. If Cronulla's locked into 4th, I would definitely suggest that they're going to utilize the reserves and maybe outright rest a couple players, but if not, pull a couple others off early potentially at 4 Pines on Sunday Arvo. And I go back to Manly's in the better form right now. Tigers blip aside. The Sharkies have to try and integrate Nico in, and you can argue that they should be highly focused because it's the last chance, like a dress rehearsal, to get it right with limited time, shuffling the key position players yet again. But I just don't want to overthink this game because I rate both these teams. I actually like Cronulla more than Manly, but I like the Dogs more than Manly too, but I still took Manly last week because of the spot. It's the golden rule, motivation, motivation, motivation. I know what I'm getting in the home team at Brookvale, and there's still some players who are hard to handle even without Turbo there. I trust the halves more so, DCE and Brooks over Trindle and Hines.
And I think that was the difference last round for Manly, right? Their spine was tremendous against the Bulldogs, whereas the Sharkies, with Nico Hines now back, they're still determining how their spine looks and how Atkinson is used. And this is really a game where they might have to do a little bit of trial and error, because you'd rather make the mistakes in a regular season game where you're likely to finish fourth anyway than week one against the Storm in Melbourne. I'll tell you what, I really do like the home advantage for Manly here. They have won 8 out of their 9 games at this venue this year. Their only loss was to the Raiders, and it was by 2 points. And if the Raiders have shown us anything in the past fortnight, it's that they can definitely be giant killers and get up for certain occasions. Of significance as well, at Four Pines Park, Manly have beaten Roosters, Panthers, and Storm. When we talk the big three, they probably are the trifecta ahead of Manly, you'd have to say there. I also believe the afternoon conditions will suit their game more so than the Sharks. I think the Sharkies are probably a little bit more of a defensive side. They obviously concede less points than Manly do this year, but Manly have an electric backline, and that electricity is obviously helped by daytime conditions. Now, the obvious concern and the elephant in the room is no Tom Trbojevic. They are 2 from their last 5 with him, but I do think the emergence of options in Tolu Kola and Lehigh Hopewadi this year does mitigate it to some extent. In previous seasons when they were losing Turbo, it was Ruben Garrick shifting to fullback, and it was just not his natural position. Now, the Sharks have won their last 2 at this ground, but prior to that, they were 3 from 15. So it's a weird ground for the Sharkies to play at. Both sides averaged the same points this year at 26 points apiece, rather. So, look, I'm going to say Manly here. I appreciate this will be a tight game. I don't think they'll blow the Sharks out of the water, but the line is fine enough at 1.5 that I can take it. And as you said, we do have some upside here where Sharks are still trying to figure out how their spine looks, how Nico Hines reintegrates, and they are more likely to bring players off and rest, because they are more certain to finish fourth than Manly are to get a home finals, I suppose.
And you said you'd lay the -1.5. My best bet, just to remind people, is head-to-head $1.80, because I definitely can envision, if it's level, at DCE field goal, and I don't want to be losing by half a point. So I'll pay 10 cents and just need a victory by any margin. We also have a tip on this game from none other than Nicole. So I haven't seen this video yet. Clarkey, it's a pretty even game. I just have this feeling if he's picking a Manly player to score, it's a good omen for the bet. Vice versa, if he's liking a Sharky. Let's have a listen.
Hey everyone, it's Nicole from Wiki. I hope you guys are excited for the last full weekend of NRL action for this year. Hamole Olakawatu, found him for $3.70 on Bet365. Most bookies and Toppy, who are obviously a really good guide of a fair price, have him around that sort of $3 to $3.20 mark. I think our model and his sort of career strike rate also would have him around about $3, and obviously $3.70 sounds really, really good on Bet365. He looked really good last week, and I reckon he'll step up again in a crunch game up against the Sharks. So good luck, punt responsibly, enjoy the weekend. As always, Google Wiki Linktree to join our Discord and check out all our free content. And we'll catch you this weekend.
I knew it was going to be Hamole Olakwatu, but I didn't want to steal his thunder. That was as soon as you said.
Holy moly.
That's who I was going to guess if I had to give one.
How good was he last week? He's in great form. Off suspension and being dropped from Origin. He's one of those guys that I was alluding to that will be a handful for the Sharkies. Yeah.
I'm going to add to it Britton Nakora as well. That's not an official tip, but let's remember this for the recap show. Hamole and Britton Nakora. He's been
in scary form as well, to be fair.
He has. That'll have some good odds about it too. All righty, mate. Let's break down the final game of the round. Sunday, 4 p.m. Knights host the Dolphins. We're at McDonald Jones Stadium in Newcastle, and the line is set at -2.5 against the Knights. They do welcome back Tyson Frizzell and Tyson Gamble via the bench. For the Dolphins, Jesse Bromwich is back. Cody Nikorima joins their bench, which means Isaiah Katoa drops fully out. Final game to preview, Winnie. It is a game where both sides control their destiny. It is as simple as win here and play finals. Nothing else. It is as simple as that, mate. So which team do you prefer in this one and why?
That's it. The finals start this weekend, which is so cool. This is the eliminator. You know, we talk about could we expand the finals to 9 or 10 teams, and could we get that kind of wild card weekend, give some teams a break? That's sort of what we have. The finals are kicking off in Newcastle. Monumental game, especially the historical angle for the, new Finns joining the competition just 18 months ago and getting a historic win over Big Brother in Brisbane. Now, that's one of the main achievements that any Dolphins fan could ask for, and definitely It's one of the goals that Wayne Bennett would have had in his Dolphins tenure. But the other is, could this team make the finals? And no one would have considered it likely within 2 years, but it's there for the taking for the Dolphins. If they can overcome a Newcastle side that we do know what the Knights are capable of, and we kind of saw the best of Newcastle last year, and I feel like Newcastle's never met those heights this season. But as a Dolphins fan, I'm concerned because I watched last weekend and I watched it closely, and Kalen Ponga's pretty close to his very best. Bradman Best returned and looked in fine form as well. Frizzell is back this week. Even Pierce Paul is in the reserves for the Knights, another back rower that's an absolute handful. Of course, you don't change your winning teams. The minimal changes for the Finns, which means they're sticking with the new combinations. Fuller at fullback, Hammer into the centres, Avarillo in the halves, though. Bringing J-Brom in, slotting into the prop, they want to make sure that it's not Jesse Bromwich's final game in the NRL. And when I do look at the lineups, I do think about the centre battle in this game's elite with Herbie and Hammer one side, but against Gagai and Best, that's rep players all over the park and could decide it, who can get the better of their opposite number. But I also think what's going to be decisive in this is the halves' ability to control the game. Now, Wayne has put his faith in Sean O'Sullivan. And it's one thing when you do blow out a energy-deficient Brisbane, right? But in a tight game, Wayne probably prefers the decision-making of O'Sullivan over Katoa. And for the Knights, their halves combination has not been a strength this season. So that could be decisive. I think it's that even and anybody can win. So I do lean to the Dolphins, but I haven't come up with the best bet on this game because I also think at home, Newcastle, it's going to be a finals atmosphere, and that home advantage is a real thing. And I don't know if it's the best spot to play the Dolphins, who've already just won their grand final in a way. I know it was a double aspect for the Dolphins. Of course, they wanted to beat Brisbane, and so that game was like their biggest game of the season because it was that real chance to beat Brisbane, do something they'd never done before, but also because it would keep the season alive. So it's not this game's still that all the importance is not lost on the Finns, but as opposed to the Knights, they dusted themselves off after such a disappointing loss in Golden Point to Cronulla and really impressed me by just taking care of business against potential banana peel sides like Souths. Just took care of them, beat them by 20-odd points, and same thing for the Titans. And that they haven't gotten too high. They've been able to get those soft kills and set themselves up to give everything this weekend. If I had to best bet on this game, it would have to be the total. You'd have to look at unders in a final style game, even though it's a daytime. It could be beautiful conditions for footy.
I'll tell you what, man, I like the Dolphins here. You asked last week, does Wayne Bennett have an ace up his sleeve in regards to the Battle of Brisbane? I reckon he's got a second ace. I think he's got a second ace. He's split his pair. He's already got one picture card, and I can see another picture card coming here, man. I tell you that much. Now, there are a few danger signs. The Knights have won the final game of their season in 4 of the last 5, and the Dolphins have only won 2 of their last 9 games at New South Wales venues. Maybe this is just a coincidence, but in Wayne Bennett's entire coaching career, which is quite long, mind you, his side has never fallen out of the finals in the final round of the season. The Dolphins currently sit in 8th. So if they lose, it'll be the first time in his long and storied career where his side has fallen out of the finals in the final round of the regular season. He has also made the finals with every team he's ever coached. That's quite an obvious fact, but just to add to the pile there. The Knights have beaten the Dolphins in their past 2 games by a margin of 4-2. But when they first met, that was in Newcastle, and the Dolphins did win that. I just feel like Wayne Bennett is going to have a ploy there. They've lost their last 2 by a tight margin. When we talk pressure management, sorry, Adam O'Brien, but I will take Bennett over you every single day of the week. I just can't help but feel there's going to be a magical finish here for Wayne Bennett in the sense that no one expected him to get a Dolphins side to the finals in just 2 seasons in a roster that was made in 12 months. But if anyone can do it, it is Wayne. And I really feel like he's going to get the best out of the players for a second consecutive week for that reason and because he does have the respect of the entire playing group. And I'll just never forget the 2020 Origin series. Wayne Bennett comes in as coach. You look at who the Maroons threw out in that side, man. Corey Allen at fullback, Edric Lee on the wing, Branko Lee. Like, Branko Lee plays third grade in Brisbane only a few years later. And he managed to get not only one win, 2 wins to win the series there. So I'll just never underestimate Wayne Bennett in big spots and spots that really matter. So for that reason, I will predict the Dolphins here. I believe they win head-to-head, but I don't think it comes easy. I think this will be a really good battle. And rightfully, it will be a finals game come 1 week early, in my opinion, Winnie. And if we did ever bring in a wild card concept, this would probably be like week 1 of the finals, right? It'd be 8th and 9th playing off.
Exactly. And, on that Bennett point, I'll never forget they get the upset in Adelaide in game 1, and then Queensland gets flogged in New South Wales in game 2. And Bennett's in the change rooms just smiling, laughing, joking around, just keeping the team so calm because he knew we're getting the decider back at Suncorp. We've got what we wanted. And I can imagine Wayne was the same when the Dolphins got flogged down in Melbourne. It wasn't the time to rip shreds off the team. It wasn't the time to get too intense. He still knew we've got these big games ahead. That was always going to be a tough task down in Melbourne. Fortunately for the Finns, results have played out that was not a must-win. This is the must-win. And as long as Wayne is thinking with his big head this time in Newcastle, he can orchestrate the maiden trip to the finals. We talked about the last time these sides met, right? It was at Suncorp, and it was actually a bit of a surprise because the Knights won without Ponga, and the Finns, were sizable favourites on that day. And I do remember after the Knights won that game, I do remember saying to you, as good as this season's been for the Finns, those are the kind of games that might cost you a trip to the finals. And, well, the Finns do get a chance to redeem that one on Sunday, and then we'll be here just minutes afterwards. So I'll be sky high or I'll be down in the dumps.
100%, man. No, there's a great call back in round 10ish when you made it, and also a great call there on regarding Wayne Bennett's heads. Let's recap our best bets, mate, because we have been live for over an hour and 10 minutes. Clarkey's collect this week, guys, is as simple as taking the Panthers, Storm, and Roosters all at a line of -9.5. Because I believe all 3 sides can cover by double-digit margins, rather. That pays $3.31 on TopSport, Winnie. And your best bets are?
My best bets are Roosters -5.5. First half, $1.88, Ladbrokes and Neds. Dargans -2.5 at $1.95 on Toppy. Cows +2.5 at $1.87, 365. And then Manly $1.80 head-to-head on Sportsbet.
Fantastic stuff. Don't forget, we will next be back within 15 minutes of the Dolphins and Knights game, within 15 minutes of full time, that is. We will give you a full recap of the round as well as break down all our best bets and where it went right and wrong. From myself, thank you very much for spending your Tuesday evening with us. I look forward to seeing you back for the recap show. And over to you, Winnie, for the famous last words.
And that is unless Knights-Dolphins ends in a tie, in which case I'm not doing the show. I'm going to go and crawl into a hole if that game ends in a tie. It's actually not the next time you'll see me because I'll let people know I'm going to be putting together an NFL season preview show live tomorrow night. Wednesday night, I think we're going for 7 p.m. with none other than Nettie from Nettie Given Sunday. So I love the NFL. We are going to do a season preview. And Nettie, he's so committed that he only deep dives NFL. Couldn't care less about the NRL. And he's locked in, and it actually all kicks off Friday Aussie time. And I had an insane run on NFL tips last year. If people were following my touchdown scorer tips, like first TD, I was picking a double-digit winner every week at the playoffs from just 2 picks per weekend. And I've got other work to do tomorrow too because I'll come up with the mixed matchup. I'm also cooking some special spoon markets with Toppies. So the Spoon Bowl, it's a special occasion, and we're going to treat it accordingly with some special Spoon Bowl markets that I'll do a post about. So maybe I'll mention them on the NFL pod, but definitely the TryPod group is where you want to check out what's going to be available with the Spoon Bowl markets. Some juicy odds we're going to be able to obtain there. And once again, if you just can't get enough footy this week because it's the business end of the year, I do implore you go back and check out our round 26 recap, because we had an instant reaction. Particularly the beginning of that show is all about the Roosters situation, which is still extremely topical. Otherwise, see you within a few minutes of full-time Sunday, hopefully to celebrate a winning weekend on the 4 best bets and mixed matchup and a trip to the finals for the Finns. Fins up, Lego.